This is the Misunderstanding of Ayn Rand. I'm going to show you some clips first to give you sort of a comprehensive view of the general perception of Ayn Rand, her writings, and her philosophy, as to serve as some background for where I'm coming from and why this video needs to be made.
And now, Last Week Tonight asks, how is this still a thing? This week, Ayn Rand. How is she still a thing? Ayn Rand became famous for her philosophy of objectivism, which is a nice way of saying being a selfish asshole.
And folks, I think I can speak for everyone out there advocating following the advice of a 50-year-old novel set in an America that never existed. That when millions are losing jobs, losing homes, and losing hope, there is nothing more important than putting yourself first.
To show that her scorn for charity, for altruism.
And there's a whole literature that justifies that as, well, that's what you need to get the best CEO, and they're bringing the most value. And then you do tip into a little bit of Ayn Rand, which, Arthur, I think you'd be the first to acknowledge, because, you know, I'm in dinners with some of your buddies, you know, and I have conversations with them. So there's less commitment to those public goods.
This is a child's interpretation of a piece of literature. No, really. If you read Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead in high school, which they all claim they did because they like to poison the well, saying, well, I read it when I was in high school and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and believed in those sorts of fantastical things, but then when I got older, I learned more about the world, more mature, and therefore my decisions are better, and I realized that Ayn Rand is full of crap and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they all say that. But if that's what you got out of the book, then you failed your high school assignment. Because that is not at all what Ayn Rand was trying to communicate to her audience. Are those high school teachers that assign this material to their students actually reading the book reports that the kids submit, maybe as an assignment or an essay or a final exam on the material? How do generations of kids come out of high school or college with this complete misunderstanding of the basic premise of Ayn Rand's philosophy? I don't know how that's possible. Wait. Unless the teachers themselves don't like Ayn Rand's philosophy or don't understand it themselves. The next clip I have isolated from Phil Donahue's early 1980s interview with Ayn Rand, and I have done all the hard work to zero in to the exact point where she defines clearly what she means by self-interest. And you will see that even after she explains herself very clearly in many different ways, the audience just doesn't seem to process what she's saying. And is it because they don't understand her? Is it because of her accent? I don't know. But I think it's probably because they don't want to process what she's saying, because it doesn't complement their worldview and their sense of self-righteousness. And you'll see what happens as a result of that. It's entertaining.
Placing the interests of others above your own is the self-sacrificing person who is an altruist.
And what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with committing suicide? What's wrong with giving up life? And why is the happiness of another person important and good, but not your own? What I mean by sacrifice, and what is generally meant, is to give up some value which is important to you for something else which is a lesser value or a non-value.
Okay, that's really important. So I'm going to play that clip again and really concentrate on what she's saying.
What I mean by sacrifice, and what is generally meant, is to give up some value which is important to you for something else which is a lesser value or a non-value.
That's
sacrifice.
And you don't approve of that?
No, I don't. Now, if you love your husband or wife and you have to, let us say, select between spending money for your spouse if he's ill, or going to a nightclub. It's not a sacrifice to spend money for your spouse if he or she is your value. That is what you want to do.
Again, another way of saying the same thing. Let me replay that one, just in case you didn't get it the first time.
It's not a sacrifice to spend money for your spouse if he or she is your value. That is what you want to do.
I see.
But if you let, for instance, your husband die in order to save the neighbor's husband or your wife, that would be altruism.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to now paraphrase what Ayn Rand was saying in my own words, because I'm pretty good at rehashing things in a way that I think most people can understand. Now, if you value doing something for other people, if that's your value, if you value charity, if you value donating to the poor, if you value contributing to your local school system, baking apple pies for the poor kids down the street, whatever the case may be, if you value that, then that's what you should do, because that's your value, that's what's important to you. So that in doing that, you would be serving your self-interest, right? You can be self-interested in providing for other people. That's what she's saying. In fact, as far as charity goes, Ayn Rand has so much confidence that charitable organizations will take care of the poor that she's saying government is not even necessary, because charitable organizations, for example, before welfare, the church was the charitable organization, was the main source of charity, let's say, and they took care of people who were needing the basic necessities of life, like seeking food and shelter. Okay, she believes that much in humanity, where she's willing to say we don't need to steal from other people to provide for those less fortunate, because other people who value goodwill and charity will do it voluntarily. Ayn Rand does a great job of pointing out the logical impossibility of altruism, because altruism by definition is sacrificing yourself, meaning sacrificing your value for somebody else's. So true altruism would be something like this. There is limited amount of food between your household and somebody else's household. So what you're going to do is you're just going to kill your entire family and yourself so somebody else can have that food. That would be altruism. That is suicide. Furthermore, if you decide to go through with an act such as killing yourself for somebody else or killing your family for somebody else's family, putting morality aside, you would still be expressing your value for suicide. There's no escape. You cannot act without expressing your value for that particular action. So by definition, that can't be altruism, because altruism requires that you sacrifice your value, things you hold sacred. Your value may be charity. Your value, probably, if you have children, is your children's safety and their lives over yours. You may value a principle. You may sacrifice yourself in the name of a concept, freedom, liberty, all those things that people have done many times over in the past, sacrifice themselves for truth, for reason. Okay? That's not a sacrifice. That's giving yourself up, your material body up, for something you believe in. Okay? It's not a sacrifice. So this is all Ayn Rand was trying to say in that wonderfully entertaining Russian accent of hers on the Donahue program. Unfortunately, the idea went over quite a few members of the audience's heads. They didn't get it. Either they didn't understand it or didn't care to listen at all, because they just wanted to get up and yap their gums about whatever righteous cause they want to bring to the attention of the viewing audience. But you'll see in the next clip exactly what the consequence is of not listening when someone's talking to you.
Yes, Miss Rand, I was one of those people who belonged to your cult where we were devouring your books, and I just wanted to say that as I matured, I am glad that I was able to differentiate with your
Did you see our show
philosophies.
last year? Do you want to create an incident?
15 years ago when I was in high school,
Then,
before I went to college, and
I'm
before
not
I read the
interested in your
newspapers.
biography. I am not the victim of hippies.
No.
Pass it up. I'm not a cult.
What an asshole. Not Ayn Rand, the lady in the audience. I mean, she gets up and she wants Ayn Rand's attention. Maybe this is the only time in her life she gets to ask this question in person. And she starts it off with a grand insult.
Okay.
Oh, all right. No, I didn't mean that. I just meant that we admired your work and still do in many ways. But I'm glad now that as the emphasis today, as everyone talks of the me society, I have different feelings thinking that there are many parts of your philosophies that do emphasize and create another me society.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, I just feel that I know Miss Rand does not like the word responsibility, but as I matured, I became more responsible, I feel, and I realized that there is another world around me other than just myself and my family.
Oh my God. Look at that arrogant, self-righteous smirk on her face. What a bullshit non-apology that was. I'm sorry, Ayn, for calling you a cult, but actually what I meant was I'm a responsible person, and you're not. And look at Ayn Rand here with a look of hopelessness on her face, realizing that she just explained about 3 different times what she meant by selfishness, and that if being responsible is your value, then by all means, be responsible and move on with your life. Of course, she could also just be thinking, you low-brain quality hippie.